today I have a whiteboard and we're going to talk about a series that has like an overarching plot, and we're going to use some examples. We're going to talk about what I do, and yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to establish certain like questions. You want to answer them so you know what you're even going into. The first thing that you want is obviously your characters, so just write that down. So you got your characters, and after you've got your characters, you want to establish how long is the series going to go on. I think some people are going to argue and be like, no, that's not all you need, but I think that's really important. It's really relevant because you have to figure out what plots are going to be solved in each book, movie, short, whatever it is. But then you also have to have a plot that like overarches all of those. It's gonna be difficult. So anyways, if we take our handy dandy little, I'm gonna erase that for now. But if we take our, let's do 3. A trilogy is very like common, so we're gonna do a trilogy. Well, we've got, and I'm gonna use the example of like books. Book 1, book 2, book 3. Whew, those are not even. Guys, my perfectionism is kicking in. I have to. I didn't make it any better, but that's fine. Anyways, got book 1, book 2, and book 3. So, book 1. This is the book that everyone is going to be first coming into, and they're going to be like, oh my god, who are these people? What are these characters? What are we even talking about? What's going on? You need to have, typical example, you got a villain. Voldemort. You got Voldemort. Voldemort is destroyed, or he is defeated in book 1. Go to book 2. Voldemort is defeated again. You go to the very last book. Let's pretend this is the last book. I know it's a longer series, but you finally know every single information that you need to know about Voldemort, his backstory, how he can be defeated, how he rose and came to be. He's no longer just this like one figure antagonist. He's now all of these things. He's a bigger force, he's a bigger evil, and he's finally defeated and never coming back in the last book. That's what you need to decide for your villains and for like certain characters of yours. Even if it's not just like a villain, let's say you're writing, trying to think of something other than fantasy. Let's say you're writing a series about 2 little kids who grow up over time and they fall in love. It's like a little cutesy poopsies. Every new thing can just be a new discovery about who they are, what challenges they're facing in like each part of their lives that you're kind of going for, or sorry, that like time period that they're set in for when you're writing. But in the end, you now know everything about these characters. You know who they are, you know what they are, what is it that they have to defeat. And this doesn't have to be a villain. This can be their thoughts, their fears. It can be themselves that they're trying to overcome. So now we have the villain, the antagonist, I'll say. He starts off itty bitty, super tiny. And then in book 2, kind of get some background to him, so he's kind of like a bigger character. And in the last one, he is fully developed, big, super scary, big threat. So this is the villain, right? Up here, we're gonna go for our main character. So our main character starts off, we think we know everything about them, but they have a flaw. So let's say our character's flaw is a fear of small spaces. They're claustrophobic. I'm just gonna write claws because that's too much. They're claustrophobic. So they're claustrophobic in book 1, and they end up getting over it. They're not claustrophobic anymore, right? Solved. Well, they are also kind of scared of confinement in general. So it's not just small spaces. It's not like being confined, being taken hold of. Let's say that. This is like a bad example. I'm not sure if I spelled that right. Confined. So this gets solved in book 2. Now we go to book 3, and we find out all along he wasn't really ever claustrophobic. He wasn't really scared of like confinement. He was all just scared of being alone and being by himself. And you find this out in book 3. You're like, oh, that makes so much more sense. So now in book 3, he finally gets to solve his big thing of like his fear of abandonment and fear of being alone. And that is what makes it an overarching fear or character flaw that needs to be solved. Because something that I see a lot of writers do is they don't really have their characters grow, especially over the course of a series. That's like the hardest part, because you have them grow from book 1 where they're kind of like just like the little hero, not really doing much, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, I'm a hero, I'm gonna take charge, I'm no longer a passive character, I'm in action mode. But at the same time, then we get to book 2, there's active hero. I see a lot of times it's like, oh, active hero, but I'm just still like not really, I don't really want to do like war, like that's not my thing. And they get to book 3 and they have to do war. Unfortunate, I know, but they have to do war and they don't want to. Okay, so now I've kind of told you, you know, examples of like the villain growing, the plot needing to be bigger than it actually is, plot thickening. I've talked to you about the character flaws. I've showed you a little diagram of how I do it. But now I know you're thinking like, but how do I do it? I see your diagrams, but like, I don't know. How do I do it? I've got you. I just want to also thank you for clicking on this video, because that alone shows you that you're here to learn about writing and to further your craft and to make it just so good. So very happy with that. And okay, how do you get started? Well, what I did is when I was planning my first series ever, I wanted 6 books, because I knew that the first 4, it was going to take 4 books for that problem to start, but there was always going to be an underlining problem underneath. And then the next 2 books were going to be 10 years later, and that underlying problem that didn't seem like a problem, that was kind of just like people are going to go back and read it and be like, oh my, that was there the whole time, is going to cross over into these last 2 books. And these 2 books are going to be like that kind of thing. So what I did is I made 4 docs, just the first 4 to have where the book is finishing, where like the main like thickened plot is finishing. So that I decided who my villain was, and it was going to be a king. And then I wrote everything out, typing, and it really just helps to just get it out there. So I'm typing, doc 1, I know my first book's done. Second book, know where I'm at, typing, and I'm like, oh, this is a good guy to be, like, this character, I should make him more important to make him part of the villain, like the villain vibe and whatnot. So added him there. He's now an important part of the plot, and which makes him then more important for book 1, because book 1 he was just kind of there, but now he's relevant. Every character has a story and a purpose in my books. So boop, put him in there. Book 2, he's bigger, he's badder, he's mean, then gets knocked off, we think. Then book 3, I decide that guy was important, but like he just like, maybe there's something even bigger now. Like it's already big before, and then I kind of added that guy, which minimized it a little bit, but it needs to be big again. He shows up again right underneath another villain, and these villains are working with the original villains So now it's just kind of like this 2 problem, and it's so big because it's like, well, where do we even start? Because I know that that's also stressful as a writer, to be like, well, how do I even do these things where it's like, okay, but where do I even start, like, having my characters solve it? I don't know how to solve it. And the thing is, you gotta let just your writing take you away with that part and see where it goes. And then you get to your last book and you're like, okay, these 2 big main villains and main problems that they're kind of together, they're paired. I tackled one of them. It's kind of falling. So in your last book, falls completely. You're like, but how do I do that? I still don't understand. I wrote everything out, not like chapter by chapter, but more like the incident, rising action, climax, yada yada, all that stuff for each of my 6 books. They are not exactly the same anymore. New ideas have come in, ideas have gone out, characters have come in, characters have gone out, and it really is all like, that's the lovely part about writing, is that you can just decide what you want to do, how it feels to you, the characters are speaking to you. So to everyone who has ever asked me, how do you plot a series? How do you even do that? That is my tips to you. Make it character driven, make the plot thicken over a long time. I will draw this image for y'all one more time. Let the characters take you where they want to take you, but also know that you are in charge. So you just have to sit down and you just have to write, because their story's not going to be written unless you are there. Anyways, here's my little thing for you one more time, just so you can see character flaw and villain. Let's say villain first. We're just gonna go over it one more time. Villain first. Villain, we know a little bit about him, but he's defeated. Go to the next book. We learn a little bit more about him. Goes to the next book. We now know his full story. We understand the villain now. Like, we might even be sympathizing with him a little bit, because we're like, I really understand like where you're coming from. Gone, chucked off, because we finally understand. We finally defeated him. Characters. How's a character flaw? Kind of gets solved. They grow in this book. There's a new more prominent flaw that kind of builds off of this one, but becomes more. This one, book 2, finally we get over that flaw too, and we're like, chew, growing is done. Did it. Book 3, oh no, I just realized all of this was kind of just like a secondary emotion, because my primary emotion is here, and I need to overcome this before I can overcome any of this. I realized I didn't even really overcome that anyways. I need to overcome this. So they grow. So this character is nothing like this character. Completely different characters. They are in no way related. This is the thing where this is not consistent in your book. You're not gonna look at, think of it as like they're a little baby in their little swaddled nest. Here they are a full-grown adult. Let's give them a little sword. Some hair flying in the wind. These are not the same. Not the same from when they're a baby. They had different thinkings, different emotions. Completely different. So, food for thought. And last but not least, the plot. Plot 1. Your book, you know, you've got your rising action, or inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Done. Resolved. Make sure it's like resolved so that after every book, the reader feels like a little bit accomplished. It's okay to have cliffhangers. It really sucks when it's a cliffhanger that like feels cheap. So be careful with cliffhangers, because if it's cheap, then people are just gonna be like. So this, same thing. Inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Done. Book 3. Oh, I didn't actually like solve any of these problems. I only just kind of solved them. Do you see where I'm going with this? You see? Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I had so much fun talking about this. Like, you don't understand. I really have no one to talk about writing with. Only just a few people. So when I do get to talk, like, I hope that you got something out of this. And I feel like most of it was kind of just like common sense, but it took me a long time to really understand like what that meant and why. And I had to change my first book especially so many times because I didn't know how. So my characters were just dull. Like, they just didn't have dimension to them. And after book 1, I was going on to book 2 and I was like, it's just boring. Like, I don't even want to keep writing it. Like, how are the readers going to want to keep reading it? So I had to go back and I fixed it and now it's completely different. But yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys have a lovely day. I will see you with another video, hopefully sometime next week.